I would like to talk about Jordan Peterson. Been wanting to talk about him in more detail for a while. I have genuine respect for Jordan Peterson. I believe that he is the genuine person that I perceive him to be. I trust that he has a moral compass. I don't think he's perfect. I think he makes mistakes like all humans do. But I do trust him that he cares about his mistakes and he tries to correct them. I think he is a good man. I don't say that about a lot of people. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. And I want to disclose my bias to you so you understand why I'm talking about this. Part of why I relate to Jordan Peterson is because I am, in some ways, like him. I share some of his traits. Like him, and he said this in his own words about himself, like him, I have some more female typical psychological traits. I'm higher in negative emotionality than the average man. I'm a depressive. I cry easily and sometimes often. But like Jordan Peterson, I am a man. And in many ways, many other ways, I have a male typical temperament. Heavy on the aggressive and confrontational side, admittedly. Yes. Part of why I trust Jordan Peterson is because he interrogates himself, and he does it in public. He opens himself up to critique. But I believe that that is also one of his weaknesses. I believe that he is sometimes vulnerable to manipulative people who claim to have his best interests at heart, but who do not. I think he's too nice sometimes. I think he believes people who claim that they want to improve him as a person when they actually want something very different. His recent podcast episode he titled Apologia, about mean tweets and social media behavior. This episode is his good faith effort at being held accountable by his friends and being held accountable in public. But he got rolled. I realized that if Jordan Peterson knew who I was and listened to this, he'd probably disagree and he might even get angry. But as an outside observer, all I can go on is what I see. I don't know these people in real life, right? Obviously. I believe that Jordan Peterson thinks that some people are his friends who are not his friends. I think they use typical leftist, feminized, leftist emotional blackmail. They play on his sense of personal compassion when it's not appropriate. And they do this to distract him, to silence him, and yes, in a sense, to politically neuter him. We're going to show you some clips from this recent episode, and he's with two other gentlemen. One is Jonathan Pajot. I don't know very much about him. I think Jonathan Pajot is more conservative. He's an artist. And the other is his friend Gregg Hurwitz, and Gregg Hurwitz is, I believe, a thriller novelist, and I'm not exactly sure, but has some connection to consulting with Democratic Party concerns, I believe. So to set this up, because this is an hour and a half long, and if you're interested in this, you should watch the whole thing. You might come away from this with a very different take than I do. But we're just going to show you a little bit. And in this, a couple of Jordan's more famous recent social media posts were featured. One of them was the one about the Sports Illustrated cover with the obese model Numi Yu. And that was the one where he said, "Sorry, Sports Illustrated, not beautiful." And of course, everyone started screaming, mainly women, calling him a misogynist. The other one was about then prospective Supreme Court Justice nominee Ketanji Jackson Brown. And that was the one in which Peterson, in my view, correctly pointed out that the Biden administration had made it clear that they were only going to choose a black woman. They were not going to consider anyone but a black woman, that it was all identity politics. And one of the phrases that Jordan used in his tweet was, "Well, she looks the part." And I believe he was right. She did look the part. She looked the way they needed her to look because they said, "We gonna have a black woman." It's true. Sorry. It's true. So mainly here, Gregg Hurwitz, the liberal, is the one who takes Jordan to task, and there's a lot of worry about tone. Let's roll the first clip, please, Kevin.
It's funny because I think one of the issues is that, I think even for you,
This
Greg,
is Jonathan
is that
Pajot
everybody feels like you have a role to play. And I think a lot of this is playing up against this role because you are this catalyst for transformation. You have been this catalyst for transformation. And everybody kind of sees that. And when they see you straying from that role one way or another, they're wondering what's going on. And sometimes I think people forget that you're a person that also slips and slides and messes up and does all
Especially
that.
on Twitter.
Especially on Twitter. But there is nonetheless a reality about the fact that you do seem to play some kind of role. And that so it's good to talk about it. And I think
Well,
people
it'd be good to
listening
play it
people-
right.
That's right.
And that role should be flexible. And part of it for me is that the role that
This is
you're
Gregg
playing
Hurwitz.
has become too rigid in certain ways. And it doesn't
That's the danger.
Yeah, and it doesn't match my conception of you, and it doesn't match what I think is strategically the best use of your talent and insight.
Okay, that doesn't match my view of you and the best use of your talent and insight. We're going to come back to that theme. I haven't made my argument yet, but I'll just tell you right up front. I don't believe Gregg. I don't think he's honest. Next clip, please.
But your ear is not tuned to to language that you're using and how it translates. And in some ways, part of why I'm talking to you is by dint of our relationship, in some ways, I think I might be the best point of contact for what everybody to the left of you thinks.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's true.
And so, and right now, like everybody to the left of you does not have a high view of where you are and what you're doing.
Okay. There's going to be more of that. This, again, my point of view, outside observer, I'm just a viewer. This conversation is about who Gregg needs Jordan Peterson to be in order for Gregg's friends and colleagues to find Gregg respectable. I don't think this is the best use of your talent and insight. Nonsense, Gregg. Jordan Peterson's goals do not have to be having people to the left of me have a high view of me. He's not obligated to have that as a goal. You, Gregg Hurwitz, may have that as a goal. I think it's an expectation that you are quite cheeky, as a matter of fact, to have it all, but you may have it. Jordan doesn't have to. That doesn't have to be his goal. His goal doesn't even have to be to persuade leftists. That might be his goal, but it doesn't have to be. Morality doesn't demand that it be his goal. Next clip, please, Kevin.
What happens in part with your responses, to my mind, is it starts to be dehumanizing about the other side, not in a soft, liberal-y sense, but meaning you start to talk about the left as a monolith. And it's like, it's not a monolith any more than when you say, and we should start with Justice Jackson.
Okay, I guess I cut these into two. Yeah, we're going to talk about his tweet about Justice Jackson. And, well, let's just roll right into it, Kevin.
I mean the foolish racist. I
Yeah,
mean
I know, and the
big R
triumphant racist.
But what
Yeah.
I'll say is you don't have that and you don't understand it with race in America. And yet you blithely trotted in and you did so in a way that was denigrating, that if I didn't know you, I would think was a racial slur.
Okay. The foolish racist. I mean the foolish racist. What Gregg is saying here, actually, we're going to do a little technical thing right in front of you guys. Kevin, I don't know if I forgot to, I was expecting a different audio clip to precede this. If we have one called C4, so let's talk through, I'd like to play that one too, because it comes into this. But the, the accusation here that Jordan comes off like a racist because he made an observation about the fact that this woman looked the part because she had the skin color. I don't believe Gregg. I don't believe that. How do I want to say this? I don't think this is genuinely about, I think you said something that's racist, or that reasonable people would think is racist. I think this is Gregg Hurwitz trying to maneuver Jordan's words into seeming racist because he doesn't want him to say the things that he's saying. I don't think he wants to say them differently. I think he doesn't want him to say them at all. Kevin, do we have that clip that starts C4? So let's talk through, because there's a couple more things in there.
So let's talk that through
Kevin,
just for a sec
Yeah.
before we get to the issue of
Go
what's
ahead.
a woman. Well, I said to you, you're not an expert in race in America, and it's evident from the way you're talking about it. And you should approach it with more humility, especially as pertains to blacks in America. And I also said you're not an expert in the Supreme Court, like by a long shot.
Yeah.
And you said, but I'm an expert at selection criteria. That
Yeah.
was your answer. And I said, fine. So instead of angry, like tweet warrior Jordan, you can do an assessment of what has pissed you off about this selection process, but then
Well, it
do
was
it for-
also the strategic issue, because I was also annoyed. I thought, well, Jesus, guys, even by the lights of your own moon, let's say, you screwed up here because it was strategically foolish. You hung your candidate out to dry right at the beginning, and that was part of the irritation.
Why did you not speak up when the last three candidates going through are on a short list from multiple conservative think tanks and operation? Like, everybody knows the short list that's being considered by Trump. That's cut the field immensely.
What about Trump? What about Trump? How come you didn't speak up on Trump? How come? How come? This is just whataboutism. And I'm sorry, but is Gregg Hurwitz normally this snotty to people that he considers his friends? That is just condescending liberal snottiness. He says, you're not an expert on race in America, and it's evident from the way you're talking about it. Excuse me, sir. Well, excuse me. Are you an expert on race in America, Hurwitz? Excuse me. That's not the tone that a friend takes, even a critical friend. Believe me, I've gotten a lot of criticism, and some of it's come from my friends, and some of it's been deserved. That's not the tone that a critical friend takes. That doesn't indicate friendship. Second, it's nonsense. You know, well, you didn't consider this, and you didn't consider this, and you're not an expert on the Supreme Court. This is what I call the liberal nuance trick. You're not an expert. It's much more complicated. There are multiple layers. There's a tapestry of rich and deep variegated meaning, blah, blah, blah. You've all heard it before. You don't have to be an expert to comment on any of these things. There's no law that says you have to be an expert. And the kind of experts out there today basically got their expert license from a Cracker Jack box. So, you know, you can miss me with the suggestion of experts. Same with fact checkers. Gregg's not an expert on these things either. Yet he feels perfectly justified in having his own opinion and speaking on it. He just doesn't want Jordan to speak what he speaks. That's what's really going on here, I think. I guess I'll just say it. Psst, I don't think Gregg is in good faith. Why didn't you comment on the other justices that went through this process? Because we're not talking about that right now. Stop it. That's nonsense. It's whataboutism, and I know he would say no, and he'd say no vociferously. But again, I read for implication. I read between the lines, not just what's on the surface. And I believe that he is, in fact, meaning to imply that Jordan is a racist because he was only moved to talk about a black justice, but it wouldn't even have occurred to him if it was not a black justice. That's what I think Gregg means to imply. So we did the clip with the foolish racists. I think I didn't get this into the clip, and I should have. There was a moment during that exchange where Gregg got what appeared to me to be genuinely, I mean, not off the handle, but angry, because Jordan Peterson said a not nice thing in his view about a black Supreme Court justice. And he kind of spits out, she deserves your respect. Excuse me? Who do you think you are, Gregg? And who do you think you're talking to? Nobody deserves anyone else's respect. They can earn it. People deserve basic civility. I believe all people, with the obvious exceptions that you're not going to be civil to someone who's coming up and trying to murder you. All people deserve basic civility. but people don't deserve respect. She deserves your respect. Why? She's a black woman, and I'm a liberal. No, she can earn the respect. Stop it, Gregg. Liberals think they can demand respect, and they do demand it. Gregg demanded it of Jordan. No, no one deserves it. And I'll give respect when it's earned, period, despite finger-wagging from people like this. He also said, Gregg, you blithely trotted in and contributed to the denigration in a way that if I didn't know, I'd think was a racial slur. This is just plain manipulation, Gregg. He's playing the typical liberal game of, that's not a good look. You know, it's not a good look. Like, if I didn't know you, I'd think you're really bad. I really would. If I didn't know you, I'd think you're a bad. No. That's an implied threat. I don't think Jordan picked up on it. I did. That is an implied threat from Gregg. You know, Jordan, awfully nice reputation you got there. Be a shame if anything happened to it. There are other portions of this exchange where Gregg Hurwitz tries to tell Jordan Peterson that he, Jordan, personally hurt a vulnerable young woman. Numi Yu, the obese model on the cover of Sports Illustrated, with Jordan's not beautiful tweet. It's a typical way of taking away responsibility for the model's own participation in this campaign, which was an obvious provocation by Sports Illustrated, and by her. She's a 25-year-old woman, not a little girl, Gregg. And he's acting like it's Jordan Peterson's moral duty to feel personal, one-to-one personal concern for Numi Yu, and to see her only as a victim and not as a participant. I've talked about this when I talked about the Sports Illustrated cover. All the screaming from people, you hurt a vulnerable young woman. You hurt a vulnerable young woman. What vulnerable young woman? 25-year-old woman on the cover of one of the most famous magazines in the world. You hurt her. Piss off, you clucking mother hens. But I think my biggest disappointment in this, and I didn't clip this for you, but I'm telling you the truth, and of course you can watch the whole thing, and you should watch the whole thing. See if you agree or disagree with my analysis. My biggest disappointment with Jordan Peterson is he let Gregg roll him. And here's how he let him roll him. Jordan Peterson actually started referring to Elliot Page, a fictional person named Elliot Page. We know who this is. This is a woman named Ellen Page who now calls herself trans. And he used male pronouns for Elliot Page. Referred to Elliot Page, the man, and used male pronouns. Jordan, Dr. Peterson, you told lies because you were in a room of people who had you intimidated and people that you think are friends. You told a lie. You told the very lie that you promised you would not tell and that you so correctly publicly commented on when you started talking about Canada's Bill C-16 that would have criminalized failing to use people's preferred pronouns. That, to me, does not sound like the man that I think you really are. It sounds like someone who was afraid, who felt cornered and afraid. And I can understand that if that's the case. And I actually don't mean to be too, it's just sort of ridiculous because Jordan Peterson's never going to see this. He's never going to know who I am. But I don't have malice toward him. And if I were able to speak to him, I would try to speak to him this way. I actually mean what I'm saying without rancor. So I think he made some really big mistakes here. And I'm only watching it from the outside. I don't know the relationship between these people. But from my point of view, I don't see, and I'm not referring to Jonathan Pajot. He had much less to say during this. I'm referring to Gregg Hurwitz. I don't see someone that I would consider a friend if I were in Jordan's position. I see somebody who looks to me like a liberal hall monitor posing as a friend. I see someone who's willing to use emotional manipulation, a little bit of histrionics. He's willing to play on Jordan Peterson's personal compassion, which is quite evident. He's willing to do this to get him to stop saying things candidly and clearly because it makes Gregg uncomfortable, because it makes Gregg's friends uncomfortable. Gregg's liberal friends. I don't think he wants Jordan Peterson to be a better Jordan Peterson. I don't think he wants him to be effective. I think Gregg Hurwitz wants to co-opt Jordan Peterson. Now, on the larger issue of social media and its tendency to bring out our narcissistic and caustic behavior, they're all right. They're all absolutely correct. That is true of social media. It makes us into the worst versions of ourselves. And by design, it foments narcissism and it foments reactivity. I am an easy target for that. I've never been as unreasonable and caustic in real life as I have been on Twitter and social media. I've said many things I'm not proud of. And I've aimed bile at people who did not deserve it. And I regret that I did those things. It's a good thing I'm not there anymore, because it's not good for me, and I'm not good for anybody when I'm on there. All that's true. What's also true is that not all aggressive confrontation, not all assertive and bald statements made in public are, quote, inappropriate. When the entire media and the entire cultural landscape allows flagrant lying, blackmail, organized deplatforming campaigns, coordinated efforts by leftists to run conservatives out of a job for objecting to child abuse, frankly, it's rich for a smug man like Gregg Hurwitz to accuse Jordan Peterson of being denigrating or appearing to be a racist or to be acting in a demeaning manner. I don't think Jordan Peterson's tone has been inappropriate at all. In fact, the very things he's apologizing for in this video are the things that I've been waiting to hear him say the way he said it. I've been waiting not only for the content, but I've been waiting for the tone. The spitting contempt. Yes, I believe the spitting contempt is appropriate. We are not in a cultural dispute or argument. We are not in an etiquette disagreement. We are not having impassioned debates on public policy. That's not what's happening. We are in a war, a cultural war. Yes, I mean war. This is a combat zone. We are way past diplomacy. We are in war. And when someone like Gregg Hurwitz wants to turn a Jordan Peterson into a Neville Chamberlain, it should be easy to see that this is just another act of war disguised as a peace offering. I've said this before, but it needs to be said again. The left wants you to beat your swords into plowshares while they sharpen their own. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to lay my weapons down. You might, but I'm not going to join you. See you next week.